190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
I'm Shreya Upadhyay and this is Race to Power on WION World is One. US envoys have met with Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders in Berlin. Ukraine wants NATO-like security guarantees, but will it retreat from Donbass? Time has been ticking for Ukraine, and President Zelensky is caught in the middle of the aspirations of Ukrainians and geopolitical realities. We get you the latest tonight. Also on the show, Election Commission of India has released the list of deleted voters. 58 lakh voters have been deleted from the electoral roll. What difference can this make at the political front? We break it down for you. Will the Russia-Ukraine war get a Christmas ceasefire? Well, in the latest few days, Berlin has served as the peace point where American and Ukrainian teams have converged to talk about ending the war. Ukraine's war with Russia and its fight for peace, remember, is now entering a crucial stage. Washington's push for peace, Zelensky's pitch for security guarantees, and Russia's continuing onslaught on the front line. Time is ticking for Ukraine, and President Zelensky is caught in the middle of aspirations of Ukrainians and geopolitical realities. The high-stakes negotiations that took place in Berlin saw American envoy Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner hold talks with the Ukrainian president and European leaders, where they decided on some significant issues. The give and take includes security guarantees, no NATO membership for Ukraine, but it is the territorial concessions where the ball is stuck. Putin refuses to withdraw, while Zelensky refuses to concede. Speaking in the Dutch parliament, Zelensky accused Russia of aggression. In fact, he also spoke of the Russian demand of withdrawing Ukrainian troops from the Donbass region.
Russia has invaded our home. It's destroying our cities, our villages, killing Ukrainians, our children, and at the same time, demanding that we give up parts of our land they haven't even managed to conquer. Russia keeps nearly a million strong occupation force on our territory, and yet it demands that Ukraine accept limits on our right to join alliances and on our sovereignty.
But where do Ukrainians stand on these issues? Well, according to a recent poll by the Kiev International Institute of Sociology, majority of the Ukrainians reject withdrawal from Donbass. Remember, which is a major Russian demand for ceasefire. 75% of the Ukrainians reject any compromise on territory. Despite the difficulties of war, 61% of the respondents say that they trust President Volodymyr Zelensky. Meanwhile, the push for fresh elections has also gained momentum in recent times. But the poll data shows only 9% of the respondents want elections before the ceasefire. As things stand, Russian and Ukrainian sides are communicating through Washington. Demands and counter-demands are being discussed on separate diplomatic tables. The papers and plans are juggling between different time zones across different cities. This, remember, as Russia continues its steady advance in Ukraine. All right, let's get a perspective on the Berlin talks and where the peace deal might be headed. I'm joined by Dr. Glenn Diesen. He's a professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway. He's joining us from Oslo at the moment. Dr. Diesen, thank you very much for speaking with us at WION. Can I begin by asking you how you see the Berlin talks proceedings? There's the territorial concessions, which is the ball that is stuck in these entire talks. Rest of them perhaps have been adjusted somewhat, whether it's the security guarantees or now Zelensky saying that it's fine, we won't take the NATO membership. But how do you see these Berlin talks now moving forward?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult because the closer the United States aligns itself to Zelensky's and the European position, the further away he moves away from the Russian position. So there's a lot of dividing lines there. For example, the security guarantees. The main demand for Russia is that they argue that NATO's incursion into Ukraine is an existential threat to them. So they want NATO membership off the table, and they want the Western military bloc to disentangle them from Ukraine. Now, of course, there's the problem with any security guarantees. This would essentially tie the Western countries closer into Ukraine. And this is what the Russians do not want. So Russia says if Ukraine gets security guarantees, then Russia should also have security guarantees, that there will be, for example, no Western troops in Ukraine. But again, this contradicts what security guarantees means for Ukraine. So this is, again, at the foundation of the problem in international security. That is, you have security competition. What is security for one is insecurity for another. So it's very difficult for the sides to meet. If this would have been done 4 years ago, merely declaring that Ukraine will not join NATO would have been enough to end this. But of course now, it has manifested itself as a territorial dispute as well. So it's, I see it's very difficult to see how this peace deal can actually go through.
You know, it's also interesting, Dr. Diesen, that you talked about the duality of international geopolitics, and that is something that is seen in the fact that President Zelensky has taken a U-turn on the NATO membership, something that was the crux of this entire war. But, you know, Russia still doesn't seem to concede. What more does it want? It's got something that, you know, this entire war was started upon, no NATO membership for the Ukraine.
Well, they also don't want any de facto NATO membership, and that's the problem. That's the security guarantee. So, but again, I think it doesn't have to be either or. There's always a middle ground to be reached. So, for example, I've heard talks about security guarantees, perhaps meaning that the US would have weapon storages outside of Ukraine, perhaps on Polish territory, which the US would then open up and send to Ukraine if Russia would attack Ukraine in the future. And then, of course, there could be a clause that if it's Ukraine that initiates the hostilities, then they would not send this weapon. So there are middle grounds that can be reached. The problem is, that it's very difficult because of all the animosity now to actually do what is the first step in reaching a peace, which is a mutual recognition of security concerns. That is, you know, Ukraine has legitimate security concerns about Russia in the future, but Russia also have very legitimate security concerns about NATO's further moving towards its borders. So, but of course, there is an opportunity here, though.
And therefore, in the same breath, Dr. Diesen, can I then ask you whether Volodymyr Zelensky finds himself caught between peace and pride? On the one hand, he wants a peace deal, he wants peace in his country, but he's also got pride coming in the way, because if you give up territories, if you give in to Russian and American demands, then, you know, what sort of a leader will you be called domestically and globally?
No, well, he stands on very thin grounds. That is, his popularity has dropped significantly. He's involved in all these corruption scandals. If he gives too much of a concession towards Russia, be it in terms of restoring Ukraine's neutrality, which includes NATO, of course, or cedes any of the territories which are now claimed by Russia, then, of course, the nationalist groups, which the Americans have also financed over the years, and as well as the Europeans, they might come after him. Keep in mind that Zelensky himself actually won on a peace platform back in 2019. That is that 73% of Ukrainians voted for him because he was going to talk to Donbass. He was going to implement the Minsk agreement. As soon as he was elected, you had threats coming towards him from the nationalists and the Western NGOs saying that if you do implement what you were elected on, then we will essentially hang you from a tree in Kiev. So there's a lot of pressure on Zelensky. So I think this is a problem as well, that he doesn't have that much room for maneuver.
And therefore, a quick last question, Dr. Diesen, do you think that what Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, has said that there might be a Christmas ceasefire, do you think it's going to happen as soon as the 25th of December?
Well, if there would be something in it for the Russians, because for the Russians they see this as a war of attrition. That is, when the enemy has been exhausted, then the war comes to an end. So their main concern about any ceasefire would be that it would give especially the Europeans an opportunity to send more weapons in for the Ukrainians to regroup. And at this critical time when the Ukrainian army appears to be unraveling, it would be an opportunity to essentially stabilize the front and then keep the war going for more time. So, so this goes back to the question: to what extent is ceasefire will it precede a political settlement, or will it come after a political settlement? And this is also another dividing lines where the Russians and the Western countries are quite divided.
Absolutely. And it's not a ceasefire now, it's a permanent peace deal that both sides are looking at. Let's wait and watch when that happens. We'll leave it there. Dr. Glenn Diesen, thank you very much for speaking with us at WION and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, viewers, the winter session of the Indian Parliament is underway, and the latest flashpoint is the battle over renaming of the Rural Employment Scheme, Manrega. The government and opposition are trading barbs over changing the name of the 2-decade-old scheme to VBG Ramji. Union Minister for Rural Development Shivraj Singh Chauhan took the floor, and as soon as he sought permission to introduce the legislation, opposition lawmakers started raising slogans.
जी राम जी, विकसित भारत जी राम जी। बिल 2025 को सभा में पूरा स्थापित करने की अनुमति दी जाए।
Meanwhile, Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi Vadra led the charge from the opposition side. She rejected the bill, citing no clarity on the wage rise, increased burden on states, and employment based on demand. She also called out central government's obsession with changing names.
ये कानून बनाया, हर योजना का नाम बदलने की जो सनक है ये समझ में नहीं आती है। सर, जब ये किया जाता है, तो सरकार केंद्र को पैसे खर्चने पड़ते हैं।
Congress leader and member of parliament from Thiruvananthapuram, Shashi Tharoor, and NCP SP leader Supriya Sule struck the same tone.
It is the ill-advised decision to remove the name of the father of the nation for the reasons already given, which I will not repeat. But this is not just an administrative tweak, sir. It's an assault on the very spirit and philosophical foundation of this crucial program. Mahatma Gandhi's vision of Ram Rajya was never a purely political program. It was a socio-economic blueprint rooted in the empowerment of villages, and his unwavering faith in Gram Swaraj was part of his vision of Ram Rajya.
पॉलिसी में बदलाव लाना चाहिए। हम पॉलिसी के बदलाव के खिलाफ नहीं है। समय समय पे हर बिल को देखा चाहिए, सोचना चाहिए। और मेरी सिर्फ सरकार से विनती है कि आप इसको स्टैंडिंग कमेटी भेजिए, उस पर संक्षेप में सारी चर्चा हो। ये नाव बदलने से कुछ नहीं होता, काम को महत्व होता है सोच।
Meanwhile, Minister of Parliamentary Affairs Kiran Rijiju lashed out at the opposition. He said that the discussion on permission to propose the bill should only focus on competency of the Parliament to pass the said bill.
Only on the ground of the Rule 72 पे यहाँ इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ बिल्स पे अपोज करते हैं, तो स्पेसिफिकली स्पीकर साहब ने बार-बार याद दिलाया, we have to oppose the introduction of the bill only on the ground of the competence of making legislation of this House.
Now, responding to criticism of disrespecting Mahatma Gandhi by removing his name from the scheme, Shivraj Singh Chauhan said that the government is merely implementing Gandhi's vision of Ram Rajya.
Mahatma Gandhi lives in our heart and we respect him. Gandhi used to talk about Ram Rajya. India and Ram can't be separated from each other.
And for more on this, our correspondent Dharamjot Kaur has sent us this report. Take a look.
India's ruling alliance and the opposition have clashed on not just the name of a bill, but also certain proposals and provisions of it. We're talking about the Manrega bill, which has been a flagship program introduced by the UPA government in 2005. Now the ruling NDA alliance has proposed a change, in fact an overhaul of the entire bill, including its name, which it has proposed as VBG Ramji. Now, while the opposition is calling the bill anti-poor and also an insult to Mahatma Gandhi, on whose name the original bill was named, the ruling party is saying that these changes are required, they're a requirement of the current times. How this entire discussion, how this standoff pans out is something that we will find out more about in the coming days as winter parliament session in India remains underway. With video journalist Gopal, this is Dharamjot Kaur for WION World is One.
Shifting focus now, Bangladesh is celebrating its 54th Victory Day. It's a day of utmost significance for many Bangladeshis as it commemorates the country's liberation from the Pakistani occupation forces in 1971. Armed forces of Bangladesh held flypast to celebrate the victory of Bangladesh over Pakistan in the liberation war that spanned 9 months. Chief Advisor Professor Muhammad Yunus observed the Victory Day, where armed forces performed flypast, para-jump and band display at the National Parade Ground in Dhaka. Various programs were lined up throughout the day. Hundreds of people from all walks of life have laid wreaths at the National Martyrs Memorial in Savar near Dhaka. But not just Bangladesh. Every year this day is celebrated as Vijay Diwas as well by India for its role in the liberation war. Remember, in 1971, Indian forces and Mukti Bahini secured a decisive victory leading to East Pakistan's liberation and the birth of the sovereign Bangladesh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid tributes to the bravehearts who lost their lives in line of duty during the 1971 war. President Draupadi Murmu as well inaugurated the Param Veer Dirgh at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Meanwhile, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, the Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan, Chief of the Army Staff General Upendra Dwivedi were all among the dignitaries who were present on the occasion. The gallery displaying portraits of all 21 Paramveer Chakra awardees aims to educate visitors about our national heroes who played a huge role in defending our country. Meanwhile, the Indian Army and the Indian Navy paid their solemn tributes as well to the brave soldiers, the sailors and air warriors of 1971 for their courage, professionalism and joint resolve. Tributes also poured in from the Ministry of Defence. Remember, the Indo-Pak War of 1971 ultimately culminated in the surrender of Pakistan's army. Around 93,000 Pakistani soldiers, led by General A.A. Khan Niazi, laid down their arms in what was one of the largest surrenders seen since World War II. Let's get you an update from France now, where French farmers are getting angry. Cow culling due to a lumpy skin disease has sparked outrage across France. Farmers want a cure, not the killing of their cattle. Thousands of farmers are out on the streets in France. They have blocked roads after a herd of more than 200 cows was slaughtered in a village near the Spanish border. Tractors are parked on the highways. Farmers say that they want access to vaccines.
The total culling, the current health policy, states that for each positive case of lumpy skin disease, all the herd will be slaughtered, even if the animals are in perfect health. So we want this to stop, and we are also asking that farmers who wish to vaccinate their animals have access to it, because currently in France, the vaccine is not authorized for the vast majority of farmers.
According to the current rules, the entire herd of animals can be killed when outbreak is detected. French authorities say that the disease affecting cattle is under control and was due to launch a campaign to vaccinate an additional 1 million cattle in the affected regions. Till the 14th of December, remember, 3,300 cows have been slaughtered against 113 cases. Meanwhile, France's agriculture minister has defended planned mass cattle culls and vaccines to control the infections. Lumpy infection is not the only sign of worry for French farmers. They're also upset with the European Union. The bloc is expected to sign a trade deal with South America, which they say will flood the market with cheap products that will outcompete them.
La profession va pas bien du tout. We know full well that products will be coming in from abroad with production costs that are 20 times lower than ours. They will flood the market, and for us, this deal spells the end of French farming. La production céréalière, nous on a des...
Meanwhile, the French president has also criticized the proposed Mercosur deal. Emmanuel Macron has conveyed that the proposed trade deal does not work for French agriculture.
Un effort de
South African authorities have moved to amend rules on black ownership requirements, potentially paving the way for Elon Musk's Starlink and other satellite internet companies to operate in Africa's biggest economy. Remember, South Africa's telecommunications minister has informed the industry regulator to allow equity equivalent investment programs to count toward empowerment rather than insisting on 30% local black ownership. The policy around black ownership was introduced nearly 30 years ago to reduce apartheid-era inequality. Pretoria-born Starlink owner Elon Musk refused to relinquish equity to comply with the laws the billionaire has called openly racist. Now, the directive follows a study that found that most South Africans want the black empowerment policy to be scrapped amid criticism that it has enriched a small group of people at the expense of broader reform. A parliamentary committee has called for the minister's recent directive to be rescinded, and the row could spark fresh infighting within the coalition government. South Africa's ruling ANC party said that it was deeply concerned by the directive that has been issued by Malatsi, who is a member of the Democratic Alliance Party, which has long called for the ownership quota to be scrapped. Moving on, Mexico City Congress descended into chaos during a debate on transparency reform. A video from the chamber showed legislators shoving, yelling, and pulling each other's hair on the podium. Take a look. All right, with that, it's time to wrap up Race to Power, but news and updates will continue on WION. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions.